Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a big stack of information, pull out the most important bits, the key insights really, giving you that shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. Today, we're embarking on a really crucial deep dive into business sustainability. It's a term, we hear it constantly, but what does it actually mean for organizations day to day? And maybe more importantly, how on earth do they measure it?
Right. Our mission here today is, to explore how sustainability got so important, understand its core parts, and really unpack the increasingly complex ways businesses are now being asked to measure and report on their impact. We'll be drawing on some recent articles and research you've shared.
Yeah, and this whole journey, it feels like it really picked up speed back in the 1990s. That's when you saw governments, businesses, consumers, investors, everyone started recognizing that just chasing profits, it wasn't sustainable long term. That idea that you need to think bigger than just the financial bottom line really started to take hold.
And it's moved beyond just, doing good or corporate social responsibility. There's been a definite market shift. Just look at the demand for environmentally friendly products, processes. The move towards electric vehicles is a huge example, right? So embracing sustainability, it's gone from being maybe a niche thing to a major challenge, yes, but also really significant opportunity.
Okay, so to get us all on the same page, let's maybe start with a classic definition. Lots of these discussions point back to the Brundtland Report, that was 1987. It famously defines sustainability as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And pretty much all the frameworks, including the ones we're looking at, they highlight three key strands: economic prosperity, environmental quality, and social justice. Those three pillars are basically going to frame our whole chat today.
Okay, makes sense.
So we've got the big picture definition, but why is this so critical for businesses right now? If we move past the sort of doing good idea, what are the direct, tangible impacts on how a business actually performs?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. There's this undeniable link now between how a company behaves environmentally and its financial health. It's not just about image. Poor environmental practices, they have serious real-world consequences. We're talking hefty fines, for pollution or breaking regulations. Increased liability for environmental taxes, think carbon taxes. Okay. And crucially, really significant damage to their reputation.
And it goes even deeper, doesn't it? Poor practices can pretty quickly lead to sales dropping off or even consumer boycotts. Then there's the difficulty securing finance, banks getting wary, and in some cases, maybe even losing insurance cover. The financial risks of not focusing on this stuff are actually pretty substantial.
Absolutely. Yeah. But conversely, the upsides of focusing on sustainability are just as clear. Reducing how much material, energy, water you use, that doesn't just lessen your environmental footprint. It directly cuts your operating costs. Simple as that. Same with focusing on waste reduction that can boost process efficiency, cut material costs, even things like health and safety measures. Okay, they might not directly add value in the traditional sense, but they protect the business from massive costs associated with accidents, staff absence, potential lawsuits. It's often a win-win.
Right. So if we are genuinely moving beyond only looking at financial profit, the big question is, how do businesses measure this broader idea of performance? And this is where that concept you mentioned, the triple bottom line, really comes into play, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. The triple bottom line approach, Elkington developed it back in '98. It basically says, measure performance not just on economic value added, but also on the environmental and social value a business creates, or sometimes destroys. And it's important to realize economic impact here is wider than just profit. It includes the broader impact on society, creating jobs, paying taxes, that sort of thing.
And this thinking, it doesn't just stop at the company's own operations, right? Businesses are increasingly expected to look at sustainability all the way along their supply chain. They need to know about the social and environmental practices of their suppliers, too. Like you see with supermarkets demanding organic produce or sustainably sourced fish.
Yeah, that's a great point. And if you connect this to the even bigger picture, there's this growing recognition that long-term shareholder value, it's actually linked to preserving and enhancing different types of capital. And these, they broadly map onto those three triple bottom line pillars. So environmental impacts relate to natural capital. That's the air, water, lands, natural resources, and processes a business uses. Social impacts connect to human capital, the health, skills, motivation of your people, and also social capital relationships, partnerships, trust with the community. And economic impacts linked to manufactured capital, buildings, equipment, and financial capital, the money you have to operate. But that financial capital really reflects the value you're generating from all those other capitals. This whole way of thinking, this holistic view, it's actually a key reason behind integrated reporting too, trying to get companies focused on long-term value creation across the board.
Okay, so it's crystal clear businesses can't just look at financial data alone anymore. This reminds me of other multidimensional ways of measuring performance we've seen develop. How does sustainability actually fit into frameworks that already exist, like the balanced scorecard?
That's a really important question, actually. The balanced scorecard, it pushed for financial and non-financial measures, but a criticism was often that it still felt tied primarily to traditional economic value. Some people did suggest adding specific new perspectives for social and environmental stuff, but maybe a more powerful idea, and one that's gained traction, is that sustainability can and maybe should be woven into the existing four perspectives. You do that by embedding sustainability goals right into the core business strategy.
That makes a lot of sense. So instead of adding a new box, you enrich the existing ones. So when setting goals for, say, the customer perspective, you'd ask, have we thought about sustainability stakeholders, green consumers, local communities, regulators? Are we meeting their needs? And for the internal process perspective, have we looked hard at the environmental impacts, resource use, waste, recycling, our effect on water, air? And do our HR processes cover best practices, health and safety, diversity, equal opportunities, that kind of thing?
Exactly.
And then for learning and growth, how are our training programs actually promoting sustainability values? Is our innovation leading to better resource use, less waste, maybe greener products?
That's the idea. It's about integration, not just addition. So whatever system a business uses, the key is translating those big sustainability objectives into concrete, everyday practices. And then, crucially, identifying clear indicators, metrics to actually measure how you're doing.
Right, KPIs. Monitoring key performance indicators is standard practice, of course, but it sounds like introducing sustainability KPIs could get really complex. I mean, there must be hundreds of things you could measure. How do companies pick?
It definitely can be a challenge figuring out which ones matter most. But there are loads of concrete examples businesses could track, and often the best ones, as we said, link back to efficiency too. So for instance, energy. How much you use, maybe how much you've saved through improvements, materials, raw material input, percentage of non-renewable or recycled stuff, maybe the recycling rate for your product at the end of its life, water consumption, sure, but also how much is reused or recycled internally. Waste, total amount generated, maybe be broken down by type landfill, recycled, incinerated, or the rate per unit you produce. Emissions, could be toxic ones, CO2 specifically, overall greenhouse gases, or the company's total carbon footprint. On the social side, number of health and safety incidents, maybe even tracking sick days as a proxy for employee well-being. And don't forget the supply chain, percentage of suppliers meeting your sustainability standards or total supply chain miles. That's a big one for transport impact.
Looking at those examples, what really jumps out, I think, is how many have those direct financial links we talked about. It keeps coming back to that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That's the key insight for many businesses driving this. These aren't just nice-to-have green metrics. They're often straight-up efficiency metrics. You monitor and cut energy use, your energy bill goes down, you reduce supply chain miles, you cut transport costs, and your carbon footprint. It's that dual benefit that makes these metrics so powerful and, frankly, so essential for smart businesses. They shine a light on hidden costs and potential savings.
Okay, so given that, how well are businesses actually doing this? How do we evaluate if their sustainability measurement systems are any good?
Well, performance measurement is always selective, right? You can't measure everything. So the key questions become, what measures are they choosing? Do they give a fair, balanced picture? To what extent are they really covering sustainability? And are the indicators they've picked actually appropriate? Are they effective for measuring performance from a sustainability viewpoint? A good practical approach is often to look at the business's whole value chain, from raw materials to end use, identify where the biggest potential sustainability impacts are, and then focus your measurement efforts there first.
And beyond just what you measure, the quality of the data itself must be crucial. Reliability, comparability.
Hugely important. You have to ask, can we actually capture this data reliably? Can we verify it? Are there benchmarks out there to compare against? Are the measures defined clearly enough so we can track them consistently over time and maybe across different sites or divisions? One big challenge, especially when comparing between companies globally, is that unlike financial data, where you have things like IFRS, these established international standards, for social and environmental indicators, it's much less standardized. And what people perceive as sustainable can vary quite a bit between countries, between communities. It makes direct comparison tricky.
Given that global dimension and the importance of this, surely there are efforts to create more globally accepted frameworks for reporting. It can't just be a free-for-all, can it?
No, exactly. There are major efforts. The Global Reporting Initiative, or GRI, standards are probably the leading example. They offer best practices, detailed guidance for companies on reporting their economic, environmental, and social impacts.
Yeah.
But they aren't universally mandatory. We haven't quite reached a global standard for sustainability reporting that's equivalent to the IFRS for financial reporting. Not yet, anyway.
Okay, GRI provides guidance on how to report. And then we also have the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. They feel like they operate at a slightly different level, more strategic maybe.
That's a good way to put it. The SDGs are part of the UN's big 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It was adopted back in 2015, this huge 15-year plan aiming to tackle massive global challenges: end poverty, combat climate change, fight injustice and inequality. There are 17 high-level goals. We probably won't list them all, but they cover a massive range. Things like no poverty, zero hunger, good health, quality education, clean water, affordable energy, sustainable cities, responsible consumption. It's incredibly broad.
17 high-level goals sounds very ambitious, very aspirational. How do they actually become concrete and measurable for a business trying to contribute?
Yeah, the high-level goals are just the start. Underneath those 17 goals, there are actually 169 specific associated targets and even more detailed indicators. That's what provides the quantifiable framework. So, take Goal 8, decent work and economic growth. The overall aim is ambitious: promote sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. But then one target linked to that is very specific: improve global resource efficiency in consumption and production and endeavor to decouple economic growth from environmental degradation. And performance against that target is then measured using concrete indicators like material footprint per capita or domestic material consumption per GDP. It brings the big ambition down to something you can actually track.
Makes sense. And while it's clearly governments that have the main responsibility for hitting these SDG targets,
Right.
their success really hinges on businesses, NGOs, everyone getting involved, doesn't it? All across the world.
Absolutely. Success depends massively on businesses stepping up. But there are a couple of key challenges here. One is really getting senior managers to think deeply about how their business strategy actually creates or destroys societal value. The other is clearly showing the link between this sustainability stuff and the core operations of the business, making it relevant. One approach that seems effective is translating the language. Instead of asking, say, a construction firm about climate change mitigation, you might talk about the business risks of more frequent flooding or changing water levels impacting their building projects. Same issue, different framing. The fundamental idea really circles back to what we said about the balanced scorecard. It's about embedding sustainability thinking into your existing performance measurement systems, making it an integral factor, not just some separate add-on or perspective that feels tacked on.
Wow. Okay. So we started with that relatively simple Brundtland definition, meeting present needs without compromising the future. And we've deep dived through some really complex territory, measurement systems like the triple bottom line, different kinds of capital, nitty-gritty KPIs, and these huge global frameworks like GRI and the UN SDGs. It really hammers home that sustainability isn't just, a compliance issue or a nice bit of PR anymore. It seems deeply intricately woven into how an organization performs and, frankly, its chances of surviving long term.
Which leads to a really important question, I think.
Right.
We've talked about how the perception of sustainability can differ, how measuring social and environmental impacts isn't as standardized as finance. So given all that variability, how can we actually ensure that these global frameworks like the SDGs genuinely drive consistent, meaningful, and truly comparable sustainability performance across all the different types of businesses we see around the world?
That is a really powerful question to leave things on. A lot to chew on there. We really hope this deep dive helps you feel more informed, maybe more ready to engage with what is clearly a vital topic. What insights are you taking away today? How do these ideas about sustainability and measuring performance resonate in your world, maybe in your own organization?